Innocent until proven guilty, the saying goes, but does it apply? Tragically, death row is a place for some innocent who have been determined guilty. Meet Kennedy Brewer. Kennedy Brewer served 18 years on Mississippi State's death row for a wrongful murder conviction of a 3-year-old girl in the year 1992. Kennedy Brewer would not see the outside of a prison until his exoneration in 2008, 18 years later. So how is it that an innocent man was sentenced and placed on death row? Kennedy Brewer is not unique in this experience. Since 1973, over 156 individuals have been exonerated from the United States death row, proving the ineffective and cruel system that is the death penalty. Throughout this speech, I will introduce you to what the death penalty is and how it was established, the long history of the death penalty with regard to social and racial injustice, how the death penalty has proven ineffective in crime prevention. I will address how innocent people have been placed unfairly on death row, and finally, I will discuss how the death penalty serves as a form of premeditated murder within itself, and why it should be abolished not only in the United States, but everywhere. First and foremost, I will discuss what the death penalty is and why it was federally established in the United States. The death penalty is defined as the punishment of execution administered to someone legally convicted of a capital crime, meaning that if an individual is convicted of a capital crime, they are subjected to death. The death penalty was federally established in the United States in 1790 and is still authorized for use in 27 of the 50 states as of 2021. While this establishment made it federally legal, there was a long history of using death as a punishment prior to this point. It should be noted that the United States founding fathers were nearly all in favor of the death penalty, except for one, Benjamin Rush, who spoke against it. The death penalty was federally established to discourage criminal activity. This clearly proved ineffective even then and still continues to prove ineffective now. Often, although, the silver lining of the death penalty is to establish control, and it continues to serve that same purpose today. Next, I will highlight the long and arduous history of the death penalty with regard to social and racial injustice. In the United States, between 5 and 10% of prisoners on death row have a severe mental illness, according to Mental Health of America. As for racial groups, despite making up only 13% of the U.S. population, Black people make up over 40% of the prisoners with the death sentence. According to the UN, the poor are also much more likely to be placed on death row than the wealthy for the same exact crimes. The social and racial injustice doesn't begin here, though. Examining the history of the death penalty, it is apparent that the death penalty was used on these communities throughout the entire United States history. Now, I will speak on the ineffectiveness of the death penalty and why it has served opposite of what it was intended to, which is to prevent crime, right? To put it simply, the death penalty does not stop horrific crimes. The America South has the highest murder rate in the country and oversees 81% of the nation's executions. In states without the death penalty, the murder rate is much lower. There are other factors at play, of course, but the fact remains that no studies show that capital punishment or the death penalty is a deterrent of criminal activity. Social scientists agree at an overwhelming majority that capital punishment does not deter crime. It is suggested by some that it is more of a method of control and fear-mongering than anything else. Another point that is worthy of mentioning is the amount of innocent individuals that have been exonerated from death row. These exonerations suggest that capital crime is not always convicted fairly or accurately. How can we allow an individual to die if they did not commit the crime they are dying for? As previously mentioned, since 1973, over 156 individuals have been exonerated from death row. Every single one of those exonerated were cases that gained additional evidence later on in time. The fact that additional evidence gained later on can prove an individual innocent should be proof enough that the death penalty is a cruel punishment and too finite for a crime. Lastly, I would like to highlight the controversial perspectives that the death penalty is one of the greatest forms of premeditated murder within itself. The death penalty is just that, death. It is taking the life of another. Murder is defined as the unlawful, premeditated killing of one human being by another. Murder being defined with the word unlawful included is convenient, as laws are determined by man. And many laws have been proven throughout history to be immoral and ill-conceived, much like that of the law of death, the death penalty. What do I mean by premeditated? Well, I mean that it is planned. Capital punishment is a long process with a lot of hoops to jump through. 99 pages worth are needed in order to be achieved. The day of the execution itself is a massive legal process with articulate plans on each step of the day. With all the planning and the articulation of the day of execution, how can it be suggested that this is not a premeditated killing of another human? A simple law does not remove the reality that a human life is gone, and morally, a series of people are responsible for the loss of that life. The death penalty, whether legal or not, is one of the greatest questions of morality. How does one heinous act allow for another? How do words written into law decide whether a murder is a murder or not? Ultimately, words written into law do not mean that taking a life is morally acceptable. Simply put, killing is killing, and the fact that in the United States a form of murder is allowed is wrong, and the death penalty should be abolished. Thank you.